Welcome to the Kentucky Education and Labor Cabinet Office of Occupational Safety and Health online training resource. This class is presented as a service of the Division of Education and Training. Please read the following disclaimer, and when you're ready to continue, click the forward arrow below. Welcome. This is an overview of Kentucky's wage and hour laws, as enforced by the Kentucky Education and Labor Cabinet, Department of Workplace Standards, Division of Wages and Hours. The Division of Wages and Hours objectives are to administer the statutes and regulations through education and enforcement in a fair and equitable manner to employees and employers, to investigate allegations of violations of the statutes and regulations, and render findings in a timely and efficient manner, to conduct wage hearings and issue wage determinations consistent with statutory requirements, and to promote cooperative relations between employees and employers. The Department of Workplace Standards has the responsibility of enforcing KRS 207, 336, 337, and 339. The Division of Wages and Hours is responsible for the enforcement of wage and hour laws, child labor laws, and various discrimination laws. The Division's major objective is to ensure that employers have the knowledge of and comply with labor laws relating to minimum wage, overtime, lunch breaks, rest periods, payroll deductions, and child labor. The Division of Wages and Hours covers any individual who performs work in the state, and the department does not discriminate due to race, color, religion, sex, national origin, age, disability, or political affiliation or belief. The division does not have coverage for work performed on federal property. Kentucky is an employ-at-will state, which means the employer has the ability to hire, fire, schedule, or not schedule employees according to their needs. No employer shall discriminate between employees in the same establishment on the basis of sex by paying wages to any employee in any occupation in this state at a rate less than the rate at which he or she pays any employee of the opposite sex for comparable work on jobs that have comparable requirements relating to skill, effort, and responsibility. The Division of Wages and Hours covers topics such as minimum wage, overtime for exempt and non-exempt employees, tips and tip pooling, records to be kept by the employer, rest periods, lunch periods, payment of wages, withholding of wages, seventh day overtime, and performance bonds. To discuss a possible allegation, contact the Kentucky Education and Labor Cabinet at 502 564 3070. Wages are any compensation due to an employee by reason of his or her employment. This could include salary, vested vacation pay, commission, severance, or dismissal pay. The employee who is still employed must be paid at least twice a month and no more than 18 days in arrears. The only exception is for school employees that may be paid once a month. An employee who is no longer employed by the employer must be paid within 14 days of the last date of work or the next regular payday, whichever last occurs. If the establishment employs 10 or more employees, the employer must also supply a statement of deductions. The current minimum wage in the Commonwealth of Kentucky aligns with the federal standard for minimum wage at $7.25 per hour. This was effective July 1, 2009, and will increase automatically when the federal minimum wage increases. Employees employed in certain types of establishments are exempt from the provision of minimum wage. Those types of employers include agriculture, anyone employed as a bona fide salary exempt employee, state and federal employees, retail establishments that gross under $95,000 per year, newspaper delivery, and babysitters in an individual's home. The employer is required to keep certain records for each employee. These records shall include the employee's name, address, social security number, daily hours worked, total hours worked within the work week, the regular rate of pay, and any additions or deductions to the gross wages. The employee's records must be maintained 1 year from the date of entry. The definition of an employee is any person employed by, or suffered, or permitted to work by an employer. Kentucky does not define work. All employees shall be paid for all hours they were suffered or permitted to work. Those hours may include staff meetings, travel time, on-call, rest periods, court time, and roll call. As stated previously, Kentucky's wage and hour law does not define the term work. The law does, however, define the term employee, which means to suffer or permit to work. Thus, an employer must compensate its employees for all authorized and unauthorized work. No employer shall employ any of its employees for a work week longer than 40 hours, unless such employee receives compensation for employment in excess of 40 hours in a work week at a rate of not less than 1.5 times the hourly wage rate at which they are employed. A work week is defined as a fixed and regularly occurring period of 7 consecutive 24-hour periods. The work week may begin on any day and at any hour of the day. Each employer determined work week will stand alone and does not permit averaging of hours over 2 or more weeks. The overtime calculation is based on the hourly rate of the employee as agreed upon with the wage rate. The wage rate of the employee will include shift differentials, in charge pay, longevity pay, educational incentive compensation, commissions, working at 2 or more rates of pay, and any other compensation due the employee due to their employment. And here is an example of an employee that is employed under 2 wage rates. The employee worked 30 hours at a rate of $15 per hour for a total gross wage of $450. They then worked 20 hours at a rate of $18 per hour within the same work week for a total gross wage of $360. The total straight time due to the employee is $810 in gross wages. Total gross wages of $810 divided by the total number of hours worked, 50, will equal a weighted average wage rate of $16.20 per hour. The employee should now receive half of the weighted wage rate for all hours worked over 40 within the work week for a total gross wage of $891. Any employer who permits any employee to work 7 days in any one work week shall pay the employee at the rate of time and a half for all hours worked on the 7th day. This shall not apply to any employee that does not work more than 40 hours during the employer's 7-day work week. An individual in a bona fide executive, administrative, supervisory, or professional capacity, or in the capacity of an outside salesperson, or as an outside collector, shall be exempt from both minimum wage and overtime requirements. An individual employed in a bona fide executive capacity shall meet an employee that is compensated on a salary rate of not less than $684 per week. The primary duty is the management of the enterprise, at which the employee is employed and regularly directs the work of 2 or more other employees. The individual has the authority to hire or fire other employees or whose suggestions are given particular weight. The individual employed in a bona fide administrative capacity shall be compensated on a salary at a rate of not less than $684 per week. The primary duty is the performance of office or non manual work directly related to the management of the employer. This shall include the exercise of discretion and independent judgment with respect to matters of significance. An individual employed in a bona fide professional capacity shall be compensated on a salary rate of not less than $684 per week. The employee's primary duty is the performance of work requiring advanced knowledge in a field of science or learning, customarily acquired by a prolonged course of specialized intellectual instruction. A creative professional's primary duty is the performance of work requiring invention, imagination, originality, or talent in a recognized field of artistic or creative endeavor, as opposed to routine mental, manual, mechanical, or physical work. The overtime provision within the Commonwealth of Kentucky shall not apply to certain types of employers. Those industries are those that are primarily functioning as retail stores, hotels, motels, restaurants, agriculture, and taxi drivers. The exemption also applies to those employees as defined exempt by the Motor Carrier Act of 1935. These employees are drivers, drivers' helpers, loaders, mechanics, salespeople, parts people, and mechanics to ultimate purchasers. Employers shall grant their employees a reasonable period for lunch as close to the middle of the employee's scheduled work shift as possible. The lunch period shall be no sooner than 3 hours after the shift commences and no later than 5 hours from the time the shift commences. The lunch period shall be unpaid if the employee is completely relieved of work duties. The lunch period may also be waived by mutual agreement between the employer and the employee. Employees that fall under the Federal Railway Labor Act are exempt from this rule. No employer shall require any employee to work without a rest period of at least 10 minutes during each 4 hours worked. This is in addition to the regularly scheduled lunch period, and no reduction in compensation shall be made for hourly or salaried employees. This is also exempt for employees that fall under the Federal Railway Labor Act. It is legal for the employer to deduct local, state, or federal tax without written authorization. Written authorization is also required for insurance premiums, hospital and medical dues, or other deductions not amounting to a rebate or deduction from the standard wage. KRS 336.220 states that it is unlawful to require any employee or applicant for employment to pay the cost of a medical examination or the cost of furnishing any records required by the employer as a condition of employment. Employers cannot withhold from the wages earned by an employee without written authorization. Under no circumstances can an employer deduct for the following: fines, breakage, cash shortages in a common till, bad checks, losses due to faulty or defective workmanship, or damage to property. According to KRS 413.120, the statute of limitations for the division of wages and hours to investigate a complaint concerning non-payment of wages is 5 years. And now we'll wrap up this course with some frequently asked questions. Can the employer pay with cash or check? Yes. All wages shall be payable in legal tender of the United States. Checks on banks, direct deposits, or payroll card accounts convertible into cash on demand at full face value. Does the employer have to offer vacation, sick, holiday, or personal time? No, the employer is not required to offer any benefits at all. Does the employer have to pay out vacation, sick, or earned time off at the time of separation of employment? The state of Kentucky does not require benefits to be paid out, but does require the employer to follow company policy in either written or past practice. Do I have to work overtime hours? Yes, Kentucky is an at-will state and the employer has the right to schedule or not schedule per their needs. Can my employer change my rate of pay? Yes, the employer can raise or lower the employee's rate of pay but must provide advance notice. When do I get my final paycheck? An employee who leaves or is discharged from employment shall be paid in full all wages earned no later than the next normal pay period following the separation of employment or 14 days following the last day of employment. This concludes the overview of Kentucky's wage and hour laws. For more free online safety and health learning opportunities, please visit our website. And as always, thank you for viewing this course.